Welcome. I am your host, Lynn Ferrari, and thank you so much for joining me for the first episode of the podcast revolution called Please Don't Take This Personally, where women's empowerment meets fearless conversation and bold change that benefits all. Yes, all, because this is for everyone. As the Chinese proverb goes, when women rise, the world awakens. Or as my dear friend Susan aptly said, we are so powerful when we click our heels and go home. So here on this podcast revolution, I will be addressing those please don't take it personally moments, the term and the underlying factors that have been weaponized to silence voices and maintain the status quo. And together, we are going to reclaim that term to stop taking things personally and start taking action. So, in the immortal words of Maria from The Sound of Music, let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. And let me share a bit more about myself, why I created this podcast, why you are so in the right place, and why this is a revolution. So 62 years on this planet, raised by blue-collar parents. I am a New Yorker from Queens, a scrapper at heart with life lessons you simply cannot find in a book. I began my career in the field of human behavior in 1980 as a secretary and grew to become an executive and entrepreneur many times over across numerous industries, functions, roles, and the great fortune to work at some seriously awesome global organizations. And today I have the fortune of running a really thriving executive and team performance coaching practice, working with some truly amazing clients. With 4+ decades of experience and a front row seat as a people leader, I have witnessed incredible talent and innovation. But I have also encountered and have been directly impacted by those please don't take it personally behaviors, people, and environments. And recently, what is known as hostile work environment, which is a term defined as intimidating or unbearable for someone to do their job, is on the rise with decades of well-intended workplace sensitivity training, DEI initiatives, and billions of dollars spent. Most recently, 3 high-performing women engaged me in the same week, all executives, for coaching because they were experiencing hostile work environments. They were told they were too assertive and they were being pressured to leave. And it really hit me that despite tangible progress in gender equity by Herculean women and men of history, systemic change has not occurred, and it is time to take these discussions from the echo chambers where we absolutely are talking about these issues in ways like we never have before, and that's great, and we need to move it into the collective ecosystem to join efforts and evolve. You heard me call this a podcast revolution, as I sincerely believe a revolution, defined here by a very important way in which people do things, is required to meet and solve these legacy issues we face. So here we are on the first episode of Please Don't Take This Personally. Let's talk more about the title, Please Don't Take This Personally. Whenever I share the name of the podcast, everyone across gender, age, and ethnicity gets it. Oh yeah, they say. Please don't take this personally isn't just a phrase. It's a symbol of the dysfunctional power dynamics used to silence voices and maintain the status quo. And it's a tactic to deflect responsibility, shifting the blame onto you rather than being accountable for what was said or done. So example, in strategizing with a client or a colleague, to have my back in an upcoming really tense meeting, he agrees that he will. And in the meeting, he throws me so far under that bus that I am flat as a pancake. And when I asked him why he did that, he told me, "You got it. You are taking this personally," to deflect his lack of character and word. I want to point out at this moment that while we are focused on a lot of this happening with men, this dysfunctional power dynamic happens across genders. Just last week, I was thrown under the bus by a woman who was threatened by a power dynamic as well. on this show, we'll be talking about these moments and diving into the underlying factors that contribute to them and challenging the forces that keep society, people, and industry stuck. And we are going to reclaim the term to a collective call to stop taking things personally and start taking action in a number of ways, including empowerment and disallowance, which I'll address more specifically in a bit. And while we may not be able to change those who limit rather than lift, we can change how we act and react, paving the way for a new system, right? So empowerment and disallowance. Let me give you an example. Hannah Waddingham, the actress on the show Ted Lasso. And if you have not heard or seen that show, then I have no idea what planet you have been on. And Hannah was in a photo shoot, and a photographer said to her, "Give us some leg, Hannah." And she very professionally said, "Please don't say that to me. You would not say it to a male colleague. And if you do, I'm going to leave the shoot." And of course, moments pass, and of course, someone does, and she leaves the shoot. She did not take it personally. She took action. She empowered herself to say, "I would not prefer that." And then when the system pursued, she disallowed it. Stop taking things personally. Start taking action. Because it's time. It is time to untangle the roots of this topic through radical honesty, humor and humility, and a killer playbook for change. So you're asking, what's the playbook? Throughout my career coaching and developing this podcast, I have often found people asking, "I really wish I knew exactly what to say or had a playbook to guide me." So that's exactly what we're going to do here. Each episode, we're going to create a playbook from the show, guests, and contributions for us to take into the world and practice. Okay, great. You understand the term. Now let's talk about the underbelly of why this is happening. From my experience and research, the key issues we need to address to eliminate the "please don't take this personally" mindset are this. 1, we need to challenge gender barriers, regardless of what side of the power dynamic one sits on, because one need only examine male suicide rates. In the US alone, men commit suicide 4 times higher than women to see that toxic masculinity and this dysfunctional system is serving no one. Secondly, we need to dismantle those dysfunctional parts of power dynamics that lift versus limit society. And I am purposely calling out the dysfunctional parts of power because power dynamics without dysfunction are good and needed. Power systems can perpetuate equality, provide stability, and uphold justice when functioning properly, when they're not dysfunctional. We, thirdly, need to open up dialogue and challenge individuals who speak of equity and condemn hostile environments, yet they perpetuate the problem by their silence and thus their complicity. We need to address the root causes required in these conversations by learning how to engage in healthy conflict and discourse. This is going to be uncomfortable. Every movement of great change is uncomfortable, but it is always worth it because transformation does not happen in the comfort zone. And that's why we have "please don't take this personally" experiences, because people act badly in their discomfort instead of learning how to navigate and move past that primal fight-flight brain. Jeff Bezos, founder and former CEO of Amazon, had a line and an ethos of the company that was, "Clean facts, messy meeting." Healthy companies, healthy teams, healthy relationships can engage in tremendous discourse and achieve audacious outcomes. We have to be able to be in that space. And lastly, we needed to unite to ignite, harnessing our differences as our superpowers. So we need to value our differences in a way that allows everyone to be their best self. That's a superpower. We need to eliminate the labeling, so leadership and assertiveness based on gender, so we call women assertive and men strong. But instead, we need to discuss these topics and behaviors as healthy or unhealthy, regardless of whether they came from a man or a woman. And we need to connect the dots. This has been on my mind for so long. Imagine the impact if all the brave groups, people, and initiatives tackling gender issues come together as a united force. What if, instead of working individually, we coordinated our efforts by joining forces as a cohesive cohort? We could harness a superpower that has the potential to revolutionize the way we address these challenges, driving real and lasting change. And I sincerely believe, and evidence supports, that by solving these issues, these underpinnings of these dysfunctional power dynamics, we achieve the big stuff too. We solve for domestic violence, pay equity, human trafficking, and more, because at the root of all of this is dysfunctional power dynamics and fight-flight mentality. And here's the thing. Not only have we always had the power to change humanity at will, because we're human beings, but the pandemic also showed us that we 100% can, and we did. We stopped coming to work sick, so glad. We globally worked from home within a week. We all decided to do that, so we can do this too. We can transform the way we live and work. So that is a lot to take in. And now you know what's what and why it is so worth it for you to join this revolution. So let's dive in. At the start of the show, I laid out the key pillars we'll be diving into and finding solutions for those please don't take it personally moments. And in deciding where to start the first episode, I used a guiding principle from the book The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, which asks, what is the one thing that by doing so informs all others? And I believe the first topic we must address is permission. We can have amazing conversations and make big choices, but without the belief or the reality of permission, we won't get very far. So permission is a root cause we need to address in women's empowerment and our ability to stop taking things personally and start taking action. Think of my Hatta Waddington example. She did not wait for permission to empower herself and disallow a system that didn't serve her. So for many women, we need the permission, or we have this perception that we need the permission to speak, to lead, to act, and it holds us back and contributes to our marginalization as well. And there are typically three types of permission that we often encounter. Literal permission. So that is explicit rules or policies that limit women's roles. So an example, until recently, over the last several decades, women couldn't own property in the United States or have a bank account or get a credit card without a husband's approval. And in some places across the world, this still happens. So literal permission, you are not allowed. And then there is perceived permission with cultural backlash. Women can act, but often face negative consequences for doing it. So example, women seeking leadership roles are sometimes labeled as way too ambitious, or when we hold people accountable, we're called bossy or attacking. And then there's the unawareness of permission. So this is that women don't even realize that they have the right to speak or pursue certain opportunities. Example, many young women avoid STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math careers, because they've been subtly told it's not for them, leading them to believe they're not smart enough or capable. Research also shows that by the age 6, most girls get into a confidence spiral. So not only are they lacking confidence, but they're also not necessarily interested in roles or work that they believe is difficult in that space. And then there's the day-to-day. I was in the gym, a man next to me was playing loud music. I asked him nicely if he could put in his earbuds. This ensued. Finally, it ended up with him telling me that all he could hear was my loud voice. I shared with him that I simply just wanted to enjoy my workout, and he, of course, huffed off and left. Moments later, a woman came up to me and said, "Thank you for doing that." And I said, "You're welcome," but I asked her, "Why didn't you?" And she looked at me and she said, "I didn't even know I was allowed." So that is unawareness of permission. So I am introducing our very first playbook, Playbook 1. be mindful as you are in situations, be mindful of your position in any situation when it comes to permission. That's step one. Is it literal permission? Is it a perception that if I do something, I'm going to get backlash? Or is it that you're not even aware that you're in that position? So that's step one. And from there, you can decide your next move, whether to push it forward, hold back, or wait until you've got the right support. I used to wonder, why should I have to navigate all of this at all? And you may be saying the same. Why can't people just treat me equitably? But the truth is, those who are more enlightened often need to lead the way and be the adult in the room. So there's the three types of permission. And we need, the saying goes, in order to know where you're heading, you need to know where you came from. So there is a culture of permission that is deeply rooted, and we equally need to be aware of these and address them as we're coming up with solutions. So there is historical gender roles where women were historically excluded from public life, reinforcing the need to seek approval for autonomy. There are cultural norms and socialization. Girls are often socialized to be accommodating, which makes them more likely to seek permission before asserting themselves. And then we have patriarchal structures. Corporate and religious institutions have long prioritized male leadership, which reinforces the idea that women must seek permission to advance. There is a fear of backlash. Women face this double bind where assertiveness can lead to backlash, while passivity leads to being overlooked. And then there's lack of representation. So despite progress, women are still underrepresented in leadership roles across various sectors. So example, women make up less than 10% of CEOs in Fortune 500 companies. And this glaring inequity reinforces the belief that leadership is a male domain. And then this culture of permission morphs into something more insidious: fear. Fear of retaliation for speaking up. Fear of being labeled as aggressive or difficult. Fear of isolation and exclusion. And then we stop being our best selves, and we're not in the game the way we want. And then the cycle perpetuates itself. And this fear doesn't just hold us back, it contracts us, it stifles our voices, and it limits our potential. Today, we're confronting that fear head on because we must tackle how deeply ingrained societal and cultural beliefs not only influence how the world sees and treats us, but more importantly, how we see ourselves. And that shapes everything from our major decisions to everyday behaviors. And to do that, we must address the raw truth about permission to be able to replace dysfunctional power dynamics with empowerment and disallowance, like in the Hannah Waddingham example. So in episode 2, we're going to uncover the permission lenses you didn't even realize you were wearing and dive into these entrenched belief systems, examining historical roles, cultural norms, and that fear that keeps these barriers in place. I'll be joined by executive coach and thought leader Ming Chen, who has shattered these limits, forging her own path and empowering others to do the same. So this brings me toward the end of the first episode. The playbook for today: know where you stand when it comes to permission so you can choose your next move. And we'll have a lot more tangibles to discuss and examples to use in episode 2. And as I sign off today, I leave you with this quote from Alex Bornstein, Emmy Award winner for her role in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. "My grandmother was in line to be shot into a pit, and she turned to a guard and said, 'What happens if I step out of line?' He said, 'I don't have the heart to shoot you, but someone will.' And she stepped out of line. And for that I am here, and for that my children are here. So step out of line, ladies. Step out of line." Every time I read that or say it, I get chills for the awe of its truth. So permission, step out of line. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast revolution. Please don't take this personally. Creating this podcast has been an extraordinary honor and journey, and I am sincerely grateful to everyone who has supported me, believed in me, and contributed to its success. If you've been impacted by dysfunctional power dynamics, if you want to be a part of the solution and make this massive impact, then follow, share, and let's grow this movement together. Check out the show notes for more resources and feel free to connect with me on the platforms listed or shoot me an email at pdttp@gmail.com, which are the initials for please don't take it personally. The era of evasion is over, listeners. Let's create the future we all deserve. Remember, don't take things personally. Take action. See you next time.